Welcome to this training module showing you how to use NJcoast Maps for daily operation and service delivery. This training video is part of a 3-video set that introduces the various features of NJcoast for different use cases. In this particular session, we're going to look at how to use the GIS Layers capability and how to access and manipulate these layers within NJcoast for applications that go well beyond storm preparedness and planning. We'll begin with a primer on NJcoast, and then we will introduce the GIS data that we're working with in the platform, and then demonstrate how to access that data in NJcoast, as well as how to bring that into maps and explore those layers, how to annotate those maps, and ultimately how to manage and share those with others. So, to begin with, NJcoast was founded based on funding from the Department of Community Affairs to basically make 2 things possible. 1, to help municipalities take advantage of all the investments in GIS data. The GIS data has been assembled across the state, county, and municipal levels in the state, and we wanted to really bring together those assets into a platform that would be much easier to use and interact with. In addition, by doing so, we would also have the ability to bring in some new tools that could bring state-of-the-art modeling capabilities for coastal hazards into this platform so decision makers would have access to those data as well. NJcoast, which is located at njcoast.us, accessible through any standard web browser, provides these dual functions. Now, some key features of NJcoast to emphasize is, first of all, it is web-based. So it means that as long as you have a web browser and access to the internet, you can access all the capabilities of NJcoast from anywhere. It centralizes all the critical GIS data that's been assembled by state, county, and municipal officials into one location. And once you get into the environment, you'll find it's very user-friendly. It's a map environment that doesn't require you to know much about GIS or any kind of advanced training in special software. It operates in a very intuitive way. The platform that NJcoast is built upon is really a customizable environment, meaning that we were able to create some special tools to even help our users particularly examine the effect of hurricanes and nor'easters on their community. NJcoast also has interactive map sharing, which means that anytime that you create a map in the system, you can actually share it with others who are part of your secure groups. And that brings up the last and most important feature. NJcoast has what's called a dedicated role assignment in private groups. What that enabled us to do was to create 3 different identities in NJcoast: planning and engineering, emergency management, and first responders. Now, once we create these identities, then anybody who is joining the system and approved to work in the system is going to be assigned one of those 3 roles. And then all the data that they're going to see in their platform is a function of the role they were assigned, as well as the municipality they affiliate with. So that means we could create one centralized platform that still provides private and secure access and interaction among specific groups such as municipalities across the state. Now, in terms of how NJcoast functions as a data repository, we had an approach that's considered what's called a federated model. And what a federated model is that your website, your browser that you interact with as a user, is actually connected on the backside to a number of data sources across the state. Some of the data is coming in from a municipal source. So for some municipalities, they might be working with a provider such as T&M Associates, who are curating and maintaining their GIS layers for them on a local server. Of course, there are state resources that have been developed and managed by the OGIS and other agencies at the state level in the state of New Jersey, and they publish their data in an accessible format that we can view and ultimately bring into NJcoast so you can interact with it. And then NJcoast also has its own private database. NJcoast runs in Amazon Web Services, so Amazon is our cloud host, and all the data that we generate, mostly related to storm simulations, but also anything our users upload or anything our users create by annotating or marking up a map, all that kind of information is actually stored on our local servers at NJcoast. So we basically have multiple owners of data who are all allowing their data to be visible and received by NJcoast and put into one user-friendly interface. So the benefits of taking on a federated model, well, we can create a one-stop shop. So all kinds of data that you normally would have to go to multiple websites to find are all preloaded into your platform for your ready use. By doing it in this federated way, all of the data is maintained and updated by its original provider. So if the state was publishing a piece of data, the state will continue to own and maintain that data, and when they publish a new version of it, it will come into NJcoast. Now, more data can always be added over time. There's no limit to how many data layers can be brought into the system, so it's highly flexible when we adopt this kind of federated model where we're not responsible for all the data, just responsible for the linkages to it. And so third-party data can be uploaded to NJcoast if desired, even by the user. So you don't need to have permissions on the backside of the system as an administrator. You actually, as a user, can bring that data in yourself. The limitations of the system, well, when you federate your data in this way, you could have a disruption from the data provider that causes the data not to be available, right? There's always a possibility that a website goes down. You've experienced this in other facets of your life. And so the data provider may be having problems on their side on a given day, and that might mean that that data is temporarily not available in NJcoast when you log in. If it's a large data set, such as topographic imagery, things like that, it will often take time for that data to load into your browser, so be patient. There could be a little bit of sluggishness or lagging. Now, once the data is displayed, it is cached. That's an expression that basically indicates that the data is residing in a copy in your web browser, and it can be refreshed and reloaded much faster than your original loading of the data because it was locally cached. And so large data sets may be difficult or slow to upload the very first time onto your screen. They'll get much faster once you've loaded them once. And of course, when someone else is managing or owning the data, well, then we really can't control when or if that data is updated or the quality or completeness of the data or even the formatting they use. That's at the discretion of whoever's providing the data to us. In some cases, you might have a contractual relationship with that data provider, whereby entering into a new phase of that contract, you could require them to update and refresh layers for you. But for the most part, if it's an open layer that we are accepting voluntarily from, let's say, the state, we often have very little control over how often the state refreshes that data and updates it, and very little control sometimes over the quality and completeness of that data. So that's just one thing that we have to be conscious of whenever we're talking about large amounts of data coming from a variety of sources. So what kind of data is available to the users of NJcoast? Well, let me exit out for a minute and show you this data catalog. What we did is we assembled a catalog of all the data contained in NJcoast. Now, NJcoast data is organized by category. This is an assignment made by the provider of the data to tell you the general type or class of data it is. Then each data layer has a name. And then we also note here in the table the roles that receive that data. So P stands for planner, E stands for emergency manager, and F stands for first responder. So any data that has P, E, and F listed in this column here, this suggests that all of those roles will have that data, whereas some data may only be available to a planner. Here's an example of that. Or to planners and emergency managers. So there is some filtering of the data so that the roles each receive the data most relevant to them, and that is tracked in the third column of this data catalog. The fourth column of data catalog tells you where the data comes from. Is it a state layer, a municipal layer, and if so, who is the company providing that data, or is it a county layer, for example? And the final column gives you any additional notes that we might have had about that layer or some specifics you may want to know about it. Now, these data catalogs have been assembled for Berkeley Township, as well as the Borough of Kingsburg, as well as there's a copy of it for what's called the statewide layers. These are the data that's available to every user, including those who don't affiliate with any municipality. They at minimum have access to all of the layers that defaults from the state. The Kingsburg layers, and the ones that are designated as a municipal layer for Kingsburg only, they always have the word Kingsburg after them, and they're available only to people affiliated with the Kingsburg municipality. Similarly, there are layers like that for Berkeley that always say Berkeley after them, and they're affiliated only with people who are part of the Berkeley municipality. So these data catalogs will be built out for every municipality that enrolls into the system. and they're permanently stored at NJcoast under its Resources tab. So if you sign into NJcoast and using your username and password, you'll always come to this dashboard, and under Resources, you will see a documentation tab, and that documentation tab includes the data catalogs for statewide users, Berkeley and Kingsburg users, and as we add municipalities, we'll have the catalogs for other users. You can always click here to see this catalog and see the latest view of what data is in the system for your affiliated municipality, who gets which data layers, where they're coming from. Those are all included in the data catalogs. So now that we have talked a little bit about the data catalogs and the way the data is organized in NJcoast, I'd like to take you into the system to have a look at how we work with and interact with the data. As you saw when I logged in, I was immediately taken to this dashboard, and dashboard is your home base for NJcoast. And it has three kind of zones. The first zone is just your profile information. This is where you would come to change parts of your profile or your password or other things like that. It shows you which groups you're a part of. So I'm a part of Berkeley Township Planners, which means I can share my maps with anyone who's part of the Berkeley Township Planners group. We have our map area, which lists all of the maps that we have access to, as well as a way to explore all the maps in a map catalog, as well as another interface here to explore GIS layers that are preloaded in the system. So we'll be working with some of these tools today. And then the third column is tracking for us activities related to the storm hazard tool. Now that tool is demonstrated in our other two training modules, one on emergency management, the other on scenario planning. But just know that this is the place where you would see active storms that are being tracked in the Atlantic. Right now we have 2 storms that are still updating tracks as of September 22nd, the day I'm filming this video. And if I want to run a custom storm simulation, I can press that button to do so, or explore simulations that have been stored in the system and previously run. So these are all features that are discussed more rigorously in the other training module video. So I encourage you to check those out to learn more about what's going on in this right column. We're not going to spend a lot of time in the right column. We're going to work a lot in the middle column in learning how to work with and interact with our maps. So what we want to do is start understanding some of the terminology and language that's used by NJcoast and the technology that backs it. So we have 2 sets of terminology. One is the terminology called maps. So maps are a saved workspace, a visual workspace that you can share with others. In that workspace, you can interact with available GIS layers. You can bring in storm simulations. You can draw and mark up on the maps and save them. So this work is preserved and can be reloaded instantly by you or another member of your team, so you can always view and revisit and work with that map collaboratively. And you can see some of the maps that I have accumulated here in my dashboard. Layers, on the other hand, down here, that's a word given to a part of a GIS data set. So basically, these are usually slices of data that contain specific information. Parcel boundaries, locations of schools, locations of bridges, emergency evacuation routes, things of that nature. And these are called layers. What happens is, as a result of the way NJcoast was built, while we have hundreds of layers in our system, only the layers that are associated with your role in your municipality will be preloaded into a map when you launch the map on your screen. So let's take a look at what that's like. So from our dashboard, we can come in here and click and create a new map. So I can press this create new map and I can give a name to it. So let's call this map Ops Demo. And we'll just indicate that it's being used for the training video. So I've given it a name, I've hit create, and once I do that, the system will move me into that map immediately. So I'll zoom out a bit to show you my view. You can see immediately, let me close up these menus to make them a little bit cleaner. The Ops Demo, that's the name of the map, and the description I gave it is shown right there. And then you'll be able to see below that kind of 3 zones in this menu bar on the right that contains information that's available to you for this map. The first is GIS Layers. If I click there, it first is telling me my role. I'm a planner. So I'm going to have all of the data layers that are associated with a planner. And those are organized by categories. And so you can see those categories listed there, those headings like oceans, boundaries, etc. Let me close this caret. That makes it go away. Show you the next part of the menus here. Click here. This is my storm visualizations. So if I'm working with this data and for some reason I want to do some work with a storm forecast or a storm scenario, this is the part of my map where that information would be maintained. Active storms that are tracking towards through the Atlantic are displayed here. Historical storms in blue right below them. And then I always have the option to either load in simulations I've run before using the Explore Simulations button or run a new storm simulation. Again, the capabilities allowing me to run simulations are discussed in a separate training webinar or video, which is on what we call scenario planning. And then anything in the orange here, how I work with active storms, those are discussed in a separate training video on emergency management. So if you want to learn more about how to work with the things in the storm visualization menu, I encourage you to check out those other two videos, which will explain it in more detail. And then the last part of the menu set here is the annotation zone. When I click here, we're going to have some ability to bring in annotation tools to work with on the map, and I'm going to demo those live for you today. Okay. But now let's go back to GIS layers. The GIS layers are, again, all the data coming from the state, county, or municipal source that are all preloaded based on your role and the municipality that you're a part of. They're organized under categories, and I want to show you the kind of the three classes of GIS data that you're going to find in the system. The first I want to, let's just like go into boundaries and look at New Jersey municipalities. So if I click that, and look at the map, you're going to see all the municipal boundaries come in and load. And here they are all over here. And the boundaries all appear in this way. They are just lines. And by clicking on the lines, you normally can get a hold of an attribute box that will explain the boundary that defines. So we can see this is Marlborough Township in Monmouth County. Provide some additional information on that. So this is the kind of attribute data, as it's called, that is stored inside that GIS layer that I just activated called municipalities. Another type of data object that you're going to see, let me open up oceans to show you an example of this. We'll turn on the coastal planning areas, are these polygons, as they're called. So they're kind of like colored, shaded areas. And here you see some polygons. So here are the coastal planning areas, and you see them shaded in this green. And much like our boundaries, if I click in the polygon itself, I should be able to bring up an attribute box to tell me more about what that polygon represents. So there you go. So this is an example of a coastal metropolitan zone, and it defines some of its areas and dimensions. So this gives us the ability to load in, as I've done here, two types of objects, a line object GIS layer and a polygon or an area object. When I'm working with the area objects, one of the challenges is, depending how they're drawn, they can make it difficult to see other things underneath them. This transparency slider, which is available on every layer you activate, allows you to lighten that up so you can see things better. It doesn't take away the attribute data. Still there. I can click on it and see the attributes, but it makes it much easier to see the base layers underneath it. So that's the transparency setting here. And the last one I want to look at, let's look at an example of a point. So let's go under structure and let's take a look for the New Jersey schools. Let me turn those guys on. And we give it a moment, and then you saw these little green X's come onto the screen. So these are all the school locations. And you can see those planning area tiles taking a little while to load. That's some of the latency that you can see, the little lags that sometimes happen. But every one of the schools is denoted by an X on the map. And the schools are also associated with certain attributes that you can often view by clicking on them. As you can see here, I can see all the information on this Middletown Township school. And this is Thorne Middle School on Murphy Road. And I even have a phone number and other information that I can get just by clicking on that pin. So each of these little points that will appear on a map, they're appearing based on the information and styles that are used by the data provider, in this case, OGIS. So the green X's were their designation for how to plot schools. You also have base maps and earth cover imagery. If I bring up, for example, Natural 2017, it'll take a little while to load, but you can see the actual ground cover map, so you can get a better appreciation of what these are. And so sometimes that's helpful to work with. Again, I have a transparency setting that will let me lighten it if I want to see my street names underneath a little bit easier. But that shows you the school designation or the school location there, and now we can see the physical outline and profile of the school. So any of these layers that I select or deselect, and I can zoom in or out just by scrolling with my mouse or clicking the plus or minus signs, right? These layers are overlaid, and as I unclick the check boxes, I can turn off the various layers and take them off the screen. So simply by checking and unchecking various boxes, you'll be able to bring different layers on and off and adjust them as needed. Again, the transparency setting lets you make any of the layers fainter. This is really helpful for things like the natural topo photos that I just showed you, the base imagery, for example, as well as things like the planning areas, which came out kind of a solid green, and it was helpful to shade those and manipulate those more. Now, sometimes, we do want to learn a little bit more about this data, like, what is going on with the data that I just plotted here? I'm looking at New Jersey Fire Station. Where did this data come from, and do we know anything more about it? Well, you have the ability to actually explore data in your dashboard. And so while the data is loaded in your maps and ready for you to use, if I go out to the dashboard, I can check out more about any of this data simply by doing Explore Layers. Explore Layers takes me into my data catalog. It shows me, in my case, I have 125 records that have been shared with me as part of my profile. And those records can be viewed alphabetically, as you can see here, by sorting A to Z or Z to A. So it'll kind of refresh the list. Or by their date of creation, most recent to least recent. In addition, I have the ability to kind of browse and look through anything in this catalog to find stuff of interest, right? So we have the ability to take a look at information through text boxes where we search by name. We have the ability to look at information by category. So if I just want to see the stuff that is tagged as part of the oceans collection, well, now here are the oceans tagged items. And if I unclick this and it's not orange anymore, I go back to my full data set. So these filters are additive. I can use them progressively to zoom in on parts of my data set. They also have the ability to look by keywords. So the data layers have been tagged by their owner with a keyword. So if I want to see all the things that have been tagged before, airports and police, this is what we get here. And so you can see this information under the keywords. Things like law enforcement and correctional institutions both come up as being tagged as airport police. And also we have the ability to look at them by date. So I could enter in a date and I can search that, and it's going to give me only the layers that were created between those dates. And again, these filters are additive. So I'm able to look at airport police and then further narrow by date, and I could zoom in to a more precise set of records. But anytime that I have a filter on, until I clear the date or uncheck a keyword or category that I have highlighted in orange, or clear a word out of the text search, so I have to clear these things to get my full number back. Otherwise, as long as something is lit up in orange on the category list, or in the keywords and or in the dates option, then I'm only going to see the number of records that meet all of the conditions that searching filter set on the side specified. So use this with care and make sure you turn them off when you don't need them anymore, and check the total number of records available to you to make sure that you're seeing everything that is available to you. So now that you've kind of seen an example of how you can use these little features to kind of narrow in on different parts of the data set, you'll now be able to kind of use it to hone in on stuff. So if I said, all right, I want things in the planning layer that are related to overflows. And we can see that in the planning layer, there's one item, there's a combined sewer overflow map for New Jersey, and I was able to find that. And if I wanted to take a look a little bit further, like now I've called this record up, let's say I want to learn more about what's going on with combined sewer overflow layer, like who made this, what's in this data set. So anytime you get a layer, if you click on its title, you'll get a detailed map view of that layer all by itself. So you can see now the ability to see a couple things. Number one, I can see more details on how this layer was made and who made it, some of the keywords and categories that are associated with it, other attributes of the data, like what is actually attached to each entry. I can share this with someone if I want to. I can provide some comments on it, especially if I see that there's things in error. And I can even note things like the legend. It shows me that blue squares are used as the symbol for combined sewer overflows in this map. I can immediately take this into a map, by the way. I can create a new map and bring it in immediately. You can see here that if I wanted to, I could download this layer to work with. And I can download it in different settings, like different image types, or as raw data, such as an Excel spreadsheet, or take it into a CSV format or other shapefile. So the data is accessible and can be viewed and interacted with. You'll also note that at the top of here, you see all kinds of wonderful additional tools for measuring distances and marking up the maps. And I can measure distance or area. These are all very nice mini suite of GIS tools that are embedded into this particular interface that you can use to manipulate a little bit more and measure distances and other things using this. So this is kind of a deep dive, but a way to get an idea of how you can download some of the data that's in the system and even work with it outside the system if you desire. And if I go back to where I was, back to this view, any data that you take a look at that you're interested in, you can always view it on a map instantly by clicking here and then picking what map you want to import it into. A lot of the data is already preloaded for you, but if you find something in here that was not preloaded into your dashboard that you're really interested in, well, by browsing this catalog and then picking which map you want to bring it into, it will automatically bring that data into that map for you and keep it there indefinitely. So this is kind of a nice feature that allows you to shop around or interact with data outside of the map feature. But let's go back and play in the map, because although shopping for data and learning more about it outside the map is interesting, we want to go back to our ops demo map just to show some of the more ways that you can interact with data within the map environment of NJcoast. And one of the things I want to show you is the annotation feature. So we use the dashboard button to kind of go back to our home base. We pulled up our ops demo map. I've collapsed all my menus again to make things nice and tidy. And now what we want to do is take a look at our annotations. And so to do that, we open up the annotations menu and we make sure that this box, annotation layer, is checked. Then we click show annotation tools. As soon as we do that, some new tools appeared on the left-hand side. If I want to get rid of them, I click hide and they're gone. Click show, they're back. You can see that there are 5 different annotation tools that are available for your use. And so, as we've talked about in some of the other training videos, these particular tools are really handy for marking up areas on the map for a variety of purposes. In a storm scenario, we might be marking up the areas we're going to stage things, or areas where we're going to close roads, or areas where we might be sheltering people. But you can imagine using these annotation tools for a variety of purposes outside of storms, right? It's a way to mark up or create a map for an event happening in town where you want to mark the parking areas and traffic flow, where people might be staging booths for an art show or a carnival. You could imagine a number of ways where it'd be helpful for your team to have a shared map where you're writing notes or marking things. And so let me show you how you could actually do that using this map. So if I go over here and I just find an area I want to work, we're going to go to Atlantic Highlands right now just for fun. The first annotation tool we're going to demo is the pin. And the pin, as its name suggests, will just drop a pin on the map. When you hit the pencil, you can give it a name. Let's call it demo pin. You hit the save tool or save icon and it saves it. Once the pin is made, you want to move it, just grab it and hold down your mouse and slide it to where you want it to be. Double clicking will always bring back this little pin label. If you hit the pencil again, you can change the writing in there, Always save when you're done. And if I don't want the pin anymore, I can hit delete and the pin will disappear. So that's the pin. The next is the line. The line lets you, by clicking once, start a new line, and then every time you click again, it will make a point. And then you can move in any direction you want, and anytime you click again, it makes another point. And move in any direction you want, click, move in any direction you want, click. And when you're done, double click. Oops, I went too fast. When you're done, double click, and now you've created a line. So after creating these lines, as you can see here, I can always undo a line if I had created it in error, just by coming back and clicking on points and manipulating it. But this was an example of how to create a line. And if I click on the line, even after I finish creating it, that same little pop-up appears to let me edit it. I can, again, give it a name, hit the save bar, save symbol, and now it's saved. And if I have this line in the wrong spot, I can always grab the points for the line and adjust them and move them simply by clicking on the points, which gives me ability to move and manipulate points and modify them. And if the line is not what I want anymore, by clicking on the line and hitting the delete button, I can make the line go away. So that was a line feature. The next is going to be the polygon feature, which is this one right here. The polygon works the same way as the line tool. Every time you click your mouse, it creates a point. But in this case, it's going to drag those points into a shape, into a multi-sided shape. So first point, second point, so 2 points makes a line, 3 points makes a triangle, fourth point, fifth point, sixth point. I can keep going as long as I want. Double clicking finishes the process and marks the last point. Re-clicking any of the points can either allow you to slide them and adjust them if you made a mistake, or double clicking them can even make them go away if you like. So this is an example of how I stretched out and made a polygon, and it's got the flexibility if I click and grab these to change and move the points so the shaded area takes on the shape that I want. If I want this to be a little straighter and run along the road, I just come back and click on that point, hold it and drag it until I get it to where I want it to be. And sometimes you might have to zoom in a bit to get those and grab them and get them to behave the way you want. There we go. And then when you click in the shaded area, again, a box will come up and you can name it. So this was my polygon demo. And again, hit the save button and it's saved. So, once you've marked up little things on the map in different locations, they're there indefinitely until you make them go away. So as I zoom out, all these little features are here and they remain here until I make them go away. The next one I'll show you is the rectangle tool. As the name suggests, it draws rectangles. Click once to start. Oops, start again. Click to start and then hold your mouse down and drag while holding your mouse down, and it will stretch out and create the rectangle of your choosing. Icons will pop up to let you label it. Save symbol lets you save it. Next one is a circle. Pick the point where you want the circle to start. And then while holding down your mouse, drag and it will stretch out the radius of the circle and form the circle. And then hit the save button and now it's got a name. So the pin is a one-time click. The line is a click for every point you want to define. Double click when you're done. The polygon tool is a click for every point that you want to create and then double click when you're done. But then the square one is a click, hold, and drag. And the circle is a click to start, but then hold and drag. Okay, so that's how the different tools work. And all of them have the pop-ups, and hitting the little garbage can symbol on any of them makes them go away. So the annotation layer can be turned off by unchecking the box like any other GIS layer, or turned on to see. And if you don't like your annotations, you can always clear the annotations. We'll remind you that if you clear the annotations, they're all being deleted. So it wants to make sure that you're confident you want to do this. If that's true, say yes, and now they're all gone. But you can always show your tools again and start drawing new ones whenever you want. So again, if I have found something I want to label and I want to save it on my map, those annotations will be there forever. Now, after I've done some work on a map, maybe I've annotated a bunch of things and I want to share it now with one of my colleagues, I can just click this Share Map with Users. And all the people who are in the same group as me, their names appear here, and I can come and check their name and then hit Share, and it's going to share it out with that individual. So now that individual just received the same map that I was working on, they can also come in and start working on that map, and we're going to share that map back and forth between us. And when you go out to your dashboard, you're going to see that your maps again are always, hanging out here for you to access. This was the ops demo map I created at the start of the session. All the maps I've made, they always say private. That's a private map that I've created. If the map was shared with me from someone else, it'll appear on my list as shared, meaning I don't own the map, but the map was created by someone else and at least shared with me. So I have the ability to click on that map and work with it. If you have maps that you don't want anymore, if you click the X symbol here, it will delete them. And it will delete them permanently, not just from this dashboard, but forever. So it will always prompt you, are you sure you want to delete this? If I do, it goes away and it confirms the map was deleted. And by clicking Explore Maps, I can see more details of all my maps here. Similarly, I can search by text or date of creation. I can sort by least recent or most recent, as well as alphabetical, A to Z, Z to A. And when I work with these, I also have at any time the ability to come back and see who's got sharing rights. So if I click share, I can see that I shared this with one person. If I want to unshare it, I just unclick and update shares, and now I've taken that map away from them. So you can always click this button here and manage who's got the map and who is supposed to have the map and who you want to either update the sharing with or modify the sharing accordingly. And also, anytime that you're working with a map and you see one and in that moment you're like, wow, I want to go look at that one. If you just click View Map, it's going to take you immediately to that map. And you can come into that map and start working with it. And if there are annotations, you can start viewing them. This map doesn't look like it had any annotations saved. But if there were annotations and I wanted to see them, they would all be there when I come back. If I go to any of the maps here, I would be able to reload them instantly. All my storm results are saved, and any annotations I had will also continue to be saved. You can see this when I just loaded had a pin and some other annotations dropped in, a small triangle and a pin. Those are always there when you load the map, which is what makes it so powerful. I can always come back and access those annotations at any time. They're permanently saved in the NJcoast database until I delete the map, basically. Otherwise, they're there forever. So this gives you basically a rough demonstration of how to, from your dashboard, access maps and even create new maps, access and view in depth the GIS layers that are in the system, and be able to overall, from within a map, do various manipulations that allow you to turn on different GIS layers, as well as create annotations to mark up your maps and even share your map with others. So the last thing I want to note is that under the Resources tab at NJcoast, you're going to find documentation that includes an in-depth user manual to guide you through a lot more of this so that you can continue to grow in your understanding and capability with NJcoast. You'll also find under the Resources tab a tutorial section that includes quick reference guides and videos that can help you, again, understand a lot more of these features as you build up your capacity to work with NJcoast. So with that, I would like to thank you for joining me for this little quick instruction. I hope you found it useful and beneficial. And please be sure to check out the other training modules that are available on emergency management and planning for operations.